All right, yours truly is here to report that he is doing horrible in fantasy football. Why is that not a surprise? Now, I've not had a good season in several years, and this year doesn't look to be any different. I am 4-8, and hopefully others are having a better season than I am having. And for those that are wondering about the playoff watch in my particular division, in the conference that I am part of, the tougher division, there is a report about it out now. So I will let y'all know what that report says, other than the fact that I am doing very bad. So they're saying that, if folks needed 8 wins, should have a very good chance of making the playoffs. I've got half of that. And, they're saying that 7 wins might keep a team's hope alive for stealing a 6 seed in a tiebreaker. And that's what's going on in that relationship. And like I said, not happening here in this way whatsoever. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Maybe 2022 will be my year, or 2023. Let's hope for 2022, or that I can win the Sucker Bowl and at least get something that way as well. So with a 2-game lead over Bradley's Cowboys, them boys have just about locked a division title. That's right, they've locked that in the Coltrane division because the two teams split their head-to-head matchups. Bradley Cowboys could still take the division if Dem Boys loses its final 2 games and Bradley wins his final 2 games. With one more win, Dem Boys clinches the division. With one more win, Bradley has a very good chance to make the playoffs, and with 2 more wins, Bradley is a lock for the playoffs and would take the 4th seed. The Raven Anteaters, which is the commissioner's team, need to win their final 2 games to have a great chance of making the playoffs. And the Mofos and the Jackrabbit Slims are locked into those Sucker Bowl playoffs along with yours truly. In the Hendricks division, with one more victory, the Carolina Eagles will clinch the division. The Eagles also clinch if Tony's team loses one more game. If the Eagles lose both games and Tony's teams win both, including a Week 13 showdown with the Eagles, it would go to total points scored for the season between the Eagles and Tony. At the moment, Tony's team has a 18.75 point edge over the Eagles, and that does not look like that's going to be very much easy to catch up with, in my opinion. To further complicate things, if the Vice Squad ends the season in a 3-way tie with the Eagle and Tony's teams, it would come down to a 3-way tie decided by total points scored in the season, because no one team swept all 4 games with the other 2 teams, and because all 4 teams would have identical division records. Currently, Vice Squad is right between the Eagles and Tony teams. The Eagles have the best chance to win, but everything is still up in the air for at least one more week. If I Wish a Motherfucker Would wins, and either way, that's my brother's team, with its final 2 games, they keep alive the slimmest of playoff hopes, but another loss guarantees a Sucker Bowl spot, and yours truly is locked into the Sucker Bowl bracket. So who knows, my brother might be joining me there, or he might sneak into the playoffs. I'm going to root for him to sneak into the playoffs because he is my brother, and he's done good in a couple of these past tournaments and all of that. So let's hope that he does well and that he manages to win some games and gets in there. In the Marley division, the BW players clinch the division with one more victory. If the UV Hustlers win both games and BWP loses both games, the UV Hustlers would win the tiebreaker by virtue of a better division record. If BWP loses both games and Kiss My You Know What wins both games, the players would win the tiebreakers against KMA by virtue of a better division record. And KMA cannot win the division, but can keep his slim playoff hopes alive by winning the final 2 games. The Apex Predators have been planning for the Sucker Bowl playoffs since week 6. So it looks like they've been planning there for a while. And, that team I was talking about that my brothers got, they scored the 5th most points in the conference in week 11, but he wished he had played somewhat other than Tony's team, which came roaring out of the tunnel and mauled his team 115.25 to 66.5 on the way to taking pay dirt for the week. Juggernaut Jonathan Taylor, the best running back in fantasy football, exploded for 37.75 points, and Cannonball Kirk Cousins added 23 points, and rookie Elijah Moore had 16 points. In the tougher island of the 4 teams still alive, the Carolina Eagles 52.50 to 61 loss to Giving You the Blues got them kicked off the island. So they got kicked off the island in week 11, and you can blame it on the AFC East, as the Ty Johnson Jets, Tyler Bass Buffalo, and Hunter Henry New England combined for a putrid 0.75. And still alive are them boys, Bradley's Cowboys, and BW players. And I can tell you that after I had that win, I took a loss in the next game, which is why I am now at that paltry record of 4-8. So that's one of the things that's going on in that category. If you're wondering about the Trapezoid division, well, then with one loss by the Black Panthers or two victories, the demolishing Desperados will clinch the division. The Black Panthers and the Desperados end up tied. The Desperados win the tiebreaker because they swept BP, the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers wins its final two games, and the Desperados lose their final two. BP wins the division. If either team gets to 8 victories, a playoff berth is virtually guaranteed. Yes, I know, and Capital Punishment have faint playoff odds, and they must win their final 2 games to keep them alive. The Crackers are holding the door open for everyone else to come down to the Sucker Bowl playoffs. And in the two-box division, toughest division is as tight as it gets at the top. Gonzo's Revenge and Mod Squad are tied at the top. Gonzo Revenge wins any tiebreaker with Mod Squad because of a sweep in the regular season. If Mod Squad wants to win the division, they will have to end up with a better record than Gonzo. The Chronics outlet is a little bit more complicated, and there remains a Week 13 matchup with Gonzo that might decide the division title. If the 3 teams end up tied after Week 13 and end up with identical division records, it will come down to total points scored. Currently, Gonzo has a comfortable 73.25 point lead over Mod Squad and an impossible 125.50 point lead over the Chronic. The Tougher Football Team and FYG are locked into the Sucker playoffs. In the Prince division, because they swept the Jersey Ballers, Public Enemy has clinched the division title. The Jersey Ballers would virtually clinch a playoff victory or with one more victory and definitely lock it up with 2 more wins. The Great One needs to win both remaining games to have a slight chance of sneaking into the playoffs. Alpha for Life is hoping to spark things up in the Sucker Bowl playoffs. And a week after getting booted from Tougher Island, Public Enemy stormed back with a narrow 88.75 to 81.25 victory over the Jersey Ballers to lock up the Prince Division title and take pay dirt in the process. Jalen Hurts placed the team with 20 points. Receiver Elijah Moore and Deontay Johnson added 16 and 13.7 points, respectively. Of the 4 teams still on the island, a 63.75 to 83 loss to the Great One doomed Alpha for Life to eviction. Lamar Jackson's absence from the playing field and Randy Bullock's terrible game resulted in 2 zeros for Alpha for Life. That was the difference between staying alive and getting kicked off. Still alive, Gonzo's Revenge, Mob Squad, and the Jersey Ballers. So if you want to know some odds and ends, a couple of years ago, Tuffa started a new prize money category for the team in all of Tuffa who scores the most points for the season. If you scroll down the past the standings and transaction list, you'll see the weekly summer. That tracks each week's weekly scoring and adds it up at the end. With 2 weeks to go, it looks like this is a 2-way race between them boys and the BW players heading into week 12. The BW players have a 26-point lead over them boys. Right now, it's too close to call. Gonzo's Revenge was in the running until scoring in the 50s in week 9 and 10. Now Gonzo is 86.75 points behind the leader, and we need 2 massive weeks to contend with the leaders. Back around week 7 and 8, it looked like 10 teams were battling for the crown into the final week. Of course, the NFL gods took care of that with some shocking decisions, and the losses mounted going up. Going into week 12, only 3 teams remained: Carolina's Eagles, Tony's teams, and Jersey's Ballers. All 3 already have 1X, so no one has a cushion over the others. Will they all make it past week 12? And the back and forth competition in the NFL pool pickup is going to come down to the final week. KMA remains atop the leaderboard, but a couple of low weeks have allowed the Sharks to catch up to them. A mind-blowing week 11 saw Black Panther surge upward to only 1 point behind, and Gonzo's Revenge is 1 point behind him. UV Hustlers, Crackers, and Demolishing Desperados are right behind these 2 and have realistic dreams of claiming the claiming the top spot. My guess is the next 4 contenders also have a chance of taking the title if they have lights out picks in week 12 and 13. So, there's still those COVID reminders and all of that. But let's see how we're doing in terms of picks, because I don't think I'm doing good in that category as well. So we're going to check out the NFL pool picks and whether I did any good during the Thanksgiving week. So we're going to see how this went in that regards, and also who we have picked this time around. So we are going into week 13, and I'll tell you how I did in that week. But in week 12, Giving you the blues is still way down there. It looks like we picked 7 correct winners and all of that. So it looks like we only picked 7 correct winners this past week, which is not a good amount and all of that. So gonna have to do much better. I think the best week I had was week 3 when I picked 11, and I did have some weeks where I picked 10 as well. But at least I am beating the commissioner and I'm beating FYG and the great one. But does not look like I'm anywhere near the hunt and would have to have a serious miracle to be anywhere in terms of catching up and all of that. But right now, let's see who I've got picked for week 13, which is a regular week with games on Thursday and the Sunday and Monday, no holiday games or anything of that nature. I've got the Cowboys over the New Orleans Saints. I think I'm going to stick with that one. And I've got the Miami Dolphins beating the New York Giants. I think I'm going to skip with that one. I've got the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Jets. I'm going to stick with that one. I've got the Cincinnati Bengals beating the Los Angeles Chargers. I think I'm actually going to switch that one. I think I'm going to go with the Chargers on that one. And then I've got the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Broncos. I'm going to keep that one. I've got the Chicago Bears beating the Arizona Cardinals. I've got the Vikings beating Detroit. I'm going to keep that. I've got Tampa Bay beating Atlanta. Going to keep that. Got Indianapolis beating Houston. Going to keep that. I've got the Raiders beating the Washington football team. I'll keep that. I've got Baltimore beating the Steelers. And I've got the Rams beating the Jaguars. The Seahawks beating the San Francisco 49ers. I think I'm going to switch that one and have 49ers win that one. And the Buffalo Bills beating the New England Patriots. And they're playing in Buffalo. So I think I will keep that one as well. So that is where we are in week 13. Got 4 weeks total to go in the season. And it looks like I've got my picks all the way until week 15 and week 16. So we'll just keep that going right now. And I'll save those last 2 maybe for next week or the week after as we continue to report on things happening in the world of sports, that is. Do want to keep you informed about things going on in the world of golf. Tiger Woods has offered hopes of a return, but also a sobering assessment of his situation in his first interview since a serious car crash back in February. Speaking at his first news conference Tuesday, a day after a lengthy video conversation with Golf Digest was released, Woods expressed gratitude for being alive and not losing part of his right leg to amputation. At the Hero World Challenge in the Bahamas, an event he hosts for his foundation, Woods also spoke alternatively about his desire to come back and play competitive golf and his realization that it is unlikely that his leg or his game can ever be the same. It's just going to take some time, and he would not say when, but Woods acknowledged it is a long way off. He also seemed eager for the challenge of going through rehab to get to a point where he can compete again, even if it's limited. While a full schedule and all the practice required to play at that level is undesirable, being able to pick his spots seems to be an idea he likes. To ramp up for a few events a year, as Mr. Ben Hogan did, he did a pretty good job of it, and there's no reason that I can't do that and feel ready, Woods said earlier today. I may not be tournament sharp in the sense I haven't played tournaments, but I think if you practice correctly and you do it correctly, that I've come off surgeries before, I've come off long layoffs, and I've won or come close to winning before. So I know the recipe for it. I've just got to get to a point where I feel comfortable enough where I can do that again. Coming back from a 2017 spinal surgery to win 3 times, including his 15th major championship at the 2019 Masters, makes this a bit easier to deal with in terms of golf. Woods said he's already climbed the mountain a few times and doesn't need to do it again. I don't see that type of trend going forward for me. I won't have the opportunity to practice given the condition of my leg and build up. I just don't. I'll just have a different way of doing it, and that's okay. I'm at peace with it. I've made that climb enough times. So that's what he was saying in that regards. One 3-second video of Woods hitting balls set the internet ablaze. Odds were even posted as to his ability to win the Masters in April. But the idea of playing there never has appeared even a remote possibility. Most medical people who have been interviewed about the injuries he suffered have maintained that it would be a year-long recovery. Woods himself suggested things would go faster. Still, while he looks and sounds good, that compression sock on his right leg is definitely saying a lot. When asked about the Open at St. Andrews, Woods says he'd love to be there, then dove into the Champions Dinner at that tournament and the Masters. It is quite possible that Woods has bigger goals And that for one of the rare times he is trying to damp down on the expectations, perhaps even his own expectations. He is well aware of how hard it was to compete against the world's best when he had far less in the way of physical struggles to overcome, and he knows that doing so in his late 40s was always going to be difficult anyway. To get back out and compete again would be the ultimate accomplishment at this point. I've got to be good enough to do it, okay, he said. So I've got to prove to myself in practice that I'm good enough. I'll chip and putt any of these guys, but the golf courses are longer than just a chip and putt course. We're not going to be playing the par 3 course at Augusta to win the Masters. So I got to get a little bit bigger game than that. As I've said, I've got a long way to go in the rehab process to be able to do something like that. And, there has been talk about a proposed rival golf league, and Woods has stuff to say about that as well. He has clearly been approached about Greg Norman's LIV Golf Enterprise endeavor that is seeking to start a new golf league. Same with the Premier Golf League. He said he's not interested. I've decided for myself that I'm supporting the PGA Tour. That's where my legacy is. He said, I've been fortunate enough to have won 82 events on this tour and 15 major championships and been a part of the World Golf Championships, the start of them and the end of them. So I have an allegiance to the PGA Tour. And I understand that some of the comparisons are very similar to when Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicholson broke off from the PGA of America as part of a separate playing division in 1968 to start the PGA Tour. I don't see it that way. I think the tour has done a fantastical job. So it does look like he's very much at peace with where he's at, and it looks like he's definitely trying to put people's expectations in reason and all of that. So definitely it'll be interesting to see whether he makes it back to a tournament and what his result will be, and should he make it back in any form or fashion in terms of playing competitively. So that will be some of the things that folks will be paying attention to in the golf world and all of that. And I know a lot of y'all may be paying attention to those issues as well. So if you've got any thoughts about the things going on in the golf or in the fantasy football world or anything else, definitely share those thoughts with us. We love having conversations with our people about sports and their thoughts about what is going on in the sports world and how their teams are doing, if they have favorites and all of that. So definitely, if you got a favorite and you want to share with us how that favorite is doing, we would love to hear your thoughts around that and around how your fantasy football team is doing as you're heading into the playoffs and all of that. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are paying attention to two major teams that have historically had a lot of success in football. So you can imagine the shock around Oklahoma and the entire country, even following a move so bold and seemingly out of nowhere, yet obviously in the work for some time and then possibly kept under wraps. That was 4 months ago when we learned that Oklahoma and Texas were both in the Big 12 for the SEC. The tables turned Sunday when Oklahoma got the same treatment from head coach Lincoln Riley, who joined the Sooners for USC. It's a reminder that all's fair in love, war, and college football. 4 months ago, Texas and Oklahoma were finagling their way into the most exclusive club in college football, changing the sport. Playoff expansion discussions immediately took on a new tone of suspicion. The Big 12 went into expansion mode, which shook up the American, which picked up schools and shook up Conference USA and on down the line. Texas has already begun preparations, firing Tom Herman and hiring Steve Sarkisian, who had recently been repolished in Nick Saban's spin machine in Tuscaloosa after 2 previous head coaching opportunities with mediocre results. The Longhorns brass banked on Sark's offensive prowess and his experience inside that Alabama operation to know what the Horns were up against. Oklahoma, with the supreme confidence of a school that has won 50 conference titles and 7 national championships, announced it would be just fine. We believe that special Sooner magic that we will bring to the SEC will only make us and our new conference rivals stronger, Oklahoma President Jay Harrow said when the decision was announced on July 30th. All of that happened since the Longhorns suffered through their longest losing streak since 1956, and the Sooners lost Riley, Bob Stoops' handpicked successor, who became the first coach since 1947 to leave Oklahoma University voluntarily for another college job. In between, Texas lost to Kansas at home, endured soap opera drama with a Halloween incident involving an assistant coach's pet monkey, a leaked video from a coach upset with players joking around after a loss to Iowa State, and had a starting wide receiver get into an argument with Sarkisian and later leave the team. Oklahoma suffered through a season of underwhelming wins and a couple of crushing losses, all while navigating a quarterback controversy as preseason Heisman favorite Spencer Rattler was supplanted by freshman Caleb Williams. Big 12 teams never needed motivations to face either of them, but at every turn, opposing crowds took glee in derisively chanting SEC, including Oklahoma State fans who stormed the field after their team beat the Sooners on Saturday. Texas suffered the brunt of it all season en route to going 5-7, but Oklahoma's turn came this weekend when Riley's abrupt exit shocked the entire state. On his Sunday night show, Dean Blevins, the sports director of KWTV in Oklahoma City, who grew up in Norman and played quarterback at Oklahoma from 74 to 77, said the Bedlam loss coupled with Riley's departure would go down as one of the worst weekends in Oklahoma football history. A string of 6 straight conference titles was over. The team eliminated from contention by an in-state rival that still seasoned from being kept in the dark in the realignment derby. So just look like a lot of things are going on over there in Oklahoma, and it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out in the long run and all of that. So it'll be definitely interesting to see what happens and what goes on as we just pay attention to what happens in college football. And definitely there was some things that were going on. Alabama has definitely got some things going on with what they've got happening, and a number of other things are being paid out as well. So the most exciting weekend of what was perhaps the greatest season in recent college football history brought us to this: 10 conference championship games that will decide as many as 3 spots in the college football playoffs. If we can assume number 1 Georgia will make the playoffs, whether it wins or loses to number 3 Alabama in Saturday's SEC championship game, then the Crimson Tide, along with Cincinnati, Michigan, Oklahoma State, and Notre Dame, are competing for 3 spots. The Fighting Irish are the only team that won't be playing this weekend. Since the playoffs began in 2014, 24 of the 28 participants have been conference champions. After a flurry of upsets, coaching changes, and possibly another dose of chaos in the horizon, there is definitely some things that are going on in college football that people will be paying attention to and all of that. So looks like people are paying attention even to some of the top quarterbacks in the nation as well. And they include a bunch that are California natives. Alabama's Bryce Young, who is from Pasadena. Ohio State's C.J. Stroud, who is from Rancho Cucamonga. Ole Miss's Matt Corral, who is from Ventura. And Clemson's DJ Ukulele, who is from Inland Empire. According to ESPN Recruiting, Malachi Nelson of Las Alamedas, California, is the number 2 rated quarterback prospect in the class of 2023, behind Arch Manning of New Orleans. Nelson was committed to the Sooners, but he is already decommitted, and it wouldn't be a surprise to see him flip to the Trojans. So maybe the Trojans are going to pick up somebody from their own region, and that would be very interesting as well. And there have been few defensive lines as deep, athletic, and talented in recent history as Georgia's this season. Interior tackles Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt are both worthy of being All-Americans. And Jalen Carter might end up being the most talented when all is said and done. Even after losing suspended Adam Anderson, the Bulldogs have a whole lot of edge rushers in Nolan Smith, Robert Beal Jr., and Travon Walker. So after watching Alabama's struggling offensive line get manhandled by Auburn's defensive front in Saturday's Iron Bowl, it's safe to assume the Tide won't be able to block the Bulldogs in Saturday's SEC championship game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Well, it looks like, first off, Bulldogs coach Kirby Smart said on Monday, first off, Auburn played them in a very different style. It is not what you will see Auburn play all the time. They're using a couple of different methods with their receivers and different things, but they had 5 first-round draft picks on that offense last year. So anytime you have that, you're going to have guys who have to get playing time, get experience. They've had some injuries. They've had guys moving in and out of right tackle, just as all of us in the SEC have to do in finding the right combination. In Alabama's 24-22 victory in 4 overtimes at Auburn, the Tigers sacked Bama quarterback Young 7 times. The Tide had 17 plays of 0 or negative yards. That led to 2 changes on the offensive line, with Chris Owens, the former starter, coming back to replace right tackle Damian George Jr. and Seth McLaughlin replacing center Darian Delcart. Smart attributed some of Alabama's offensive line problems at Auburn and in a 41-38 loss at Texas A&M on October 9th to crowd noise and playing in a difficult road environment. I don't know how you guys look at it, but that's a really tough place to play. So is A&M, Smart said. That doesn't fall on deaf ears with our staff, and we understand probably 2 of the hardest places to play in the country are right there. We haven't been to A&M, but I've been to A&M, and we've also gone to Auburn. It's a tough environment. Still, Alabama has allowed 37 sacks, 2.2 per game, which is tied for 108th in the FBS. I'm wondering what my buddies that are ministers over there at Christ Central have to say about that, since one went to Auburn and the other went to Alabama. And I know that they like to do a lot of following of their team, but probably also a lot of trash talking as well. So it'll be interesting. I need to get in touch with them and see what they've got to say about that as well. So definitely be interesting. And by the way, speaking of interested, could a defensive player win the Heisman Trophy? Unless Young throws for 300 yards with 4 touchdowns and leads Alabama to an upset of the #1 ranked Bulldogs on Saturday, it does seem like there is a player that is going to be getting a lot of consideration in terms of winning that, and definitely is having a great year and all of that. So they were saying that no one is having a Joe Burrow-like year. Then again, the former LSU quarterback might have had the greatest statistical season of any player in college football history in 2019. At the very least, there should be at least 2 defensive players invited to the Heisman Trophy in New York: Davis, Georgia's mammoth nose tackle, and Will Anderson, Alabama's dynamic pass rusher. So they were saying that these are 2 folks that folks need to look at and everything. Michigan defensive end Aiden Hutchinson and Georgia linebacker Jacoba Dean might also have an argument for being included in the top 10 of voting. In the past 2 decades, only 4 defensive linemen have finished in the top 10. One of them was Nebraska's Ndamukong Suh, who had one of the all-time best performances by a defender in the Cornhuskers' 13-12 loss to Texas in the 2009 Big 12 title game. In Nebraska's last game in that league, Suh had 4.5 sacks, 7 tackles for losses, and 12 tackles. It was the last time that this particular person turned in their Heisman ballot before the conference championship game. And it does look like there might be some folks that would make a very valid case about them being in that position. And by the way, I've got a dear friend in Nevada who is a Green Bay Packers fan. They're actually in Arizona right now, and it looks like they will be glad to know that their team is at the top of the power rankings and all of that. So right now, it does look like the Green Bay Packers are at the top. So as long as the Packers have Aaron Rodgers, even with a broken toe, they're going to be the favorites on most days. The offense is closely resembled the 2020 version that led the NFL in scoring, and the Packers have scored over 30 points in each of the past 2 weeks, and they now have a bye week to get a little healthier for a stretch run. It includes only 2 more road games, one of which is at winless Detroit. Right behind them is the Arizona Cardinals. That's right, losing 2 of the 3 games will cause confidence in a team to take a hit, but Arizona regained a lot of that confidence, lost by beating the 49ers and Seahawks with the backup quarterback, Colt McCoy. However, the Cardinals' loss to the Packers in Week 8 is a definite cause for concern, considering there's a good chance Arizona could see Green Bay at some point in the playoffs. As for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Bucs keep finding ways to win games despite being absolutely decimated by injuries and struggling on the road. On one hand, injuries are bound to happen on a team with several aging veterans, but the experience of players such as Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Mr. Suh, I mentioned earlier, Leonard Fournette, and Levante David can be overstated when it comes from behind wins in a double-digit deficit like the one they climbed out of Sunday at the Colts. And my friend Dean's team, the team that he roots for, the Baltimore Ravens, they're number 4. The Ravens boost the best record in the AFC, but they haven't looked their best in climbing to the top spot. Over the past 5 games, Baltimore suffered its largest margin of defeat with Lamar Jackson as its starter, a 24-point loss to the Bengals at home, and produced its two lowest point totals under Jackson, 10 points in Miami and 16 points against the Browns. With an improving defense and reliable kicker Justin Tucker, the Ravens could become a dangerous team down the stretch if Jackson gets back on track. So that'll be one of the things, is whether he gets back on track. And then in the rest of the list, we've got definitely the New England Patriots, and New England has won 6 straight games. Bill Belichick often says that no stat correlates more to winning than turnovers. So consider this. After week 6, when the Patriots were 2-4, they were -3 in the turnover differential. Now they are +10 on the season, the second best in the NFL. That's a good place to start when considering how the Patriots have turned their season around and why their confidence rating has gone up. And then the Kansas City Chiefs are doing well as well. So we'll see how they are doing.
Do you want to receive it? No.
That's okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, even your sports announcer has to get food as well. So that was a little bit of quick food, and I got that, and that will be something that I will down in a little bit. But yes, even the sports announcer needs a little bit of a bite to eat as well. So we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are winning games with their defense by allowing fewer than 12 points per contest over the past 4. Earlier this season, it looked as if they could be years before the Chiefs would be competitive on defense, but if this keeps up, every game they play the rest of the way is winnable. It is troublesome that the offense has one game in the past 5 with more than 20 points. One bad day for the defense could blow up all the Chiefs' plans if that continues. And then a team that I know one of our lawyers' dens people love, that being Bill Trasbot, they are currently number 7. They were previously ranked number 12. So those look like they are climbing up. While the ratings hasn't changed that much because the Bills haven't defeated a big time opponent outside of a week 5 win versus the Chiefs. But since the week 6 loss to the Titans, the Bills have been up and down, losing to the Jaguars and Colts in blowout fashion, but beating the Dolphins, Jets, and Saints. Buffalo has not been able to stack wins since the beginning of October. The offense needs to establish more of its identity and show that it can be effective game after game. 2 upcoming matches against the Patriots and a contest in Tampa will be very telling. Now, if you wonder about other teams in the rankings, they include the Tennessee Titans, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Dallas Cowboys, and, of course, the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers, rounding off things at a 6-5 record. And then if you want to know about some other teams, Indianapolis is 13, the Raiders are 14, and then it just goes down from that particular standpoint as well. So we're going to see what happens and what is going on in that regards as well. So a lot of people will be paying attention to the last several games and what goes on in that regards, and whether we see some very positive news in that regard, or what happens in the world of football. If you've got any thoughts about how your team is doing in sports, we would love to hear your thoughts about this and how your teams are doing, or whether you are concerned about your team in any form or fashion and all of that. We're going to go to the world of baseball. I need to see how my Brewers are doing and if they've made any free agency moves and all of that. I do see that the Detroit Tigers have made a move. If there seemed like there was one sure bet this offseason in the unpredictable world of Major League Baseball free agency, is that the Detroit Tigers would spend whatever it took to land one of the premier shortstops on the market. Now that seeming inevitability has come to pass, with Detroit agreeing to a reported 6-year, $140 million contract with former Cubs and Mets whirling dervish Javier Baez. The deal contains an opt-out somewhere in its midst, according to ESPN's Buster Olney. That the Tigers signed a shortstop is no surprise, but that it would be Baez, that was much less certain, mainly because the Tigers have been viewed for months as an ideal fit for this year's number 1 free agent. The reasons for that are obvious. Detroit is trying to climb out of a rebuild and into contention. The Tigers had money to spend and no long-term or even short-term answer at shortstop. and Correa has a longtime connection to Tigers manager and Correa brunch pal, A.J. Hinch. So to compare the contract the Tigers offered Baez to what they would have had to offer Correa, they'd have to go back and look at some other things as well. But it does look like this could be a very good move in this response, and it'll be interesting to see whether any other major players are going to be seen as doing good as well. By the way, the Cubs added looks like they've agreed to catcher Yan Gomez and offensive fielder Clint Frazier. So the Chicago Cubs have agreed to a 2-year, $13 million deal with catcher Yan Gomez, is what they're saying. And the team is also set to sign Clint Frazier, the former New York Yankee, to a 1-year contract. Sources have definitely told folks in the sporting world, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that center fielder. And catcher Roberto Perez and the Pittsburgh Pirates are in agreement on a 1-year contract. So that'll be interesting to see what plays out in that regard. And then the Rangers gave a 10-year deal to superstar shortstop Corey Seager. So definitely a 10-year, $325 million deal. And we'll see whether he plays out in that regards and what happens there as well. The Atlanta Braves, and I know there are a lot of Atlanta Brave fans here, they signed reliever Kirby Yates to a 2-year deal at $8.25 million and all of that. And the Giants are closing in on a deal with right-handed pitcher Alex Cobb. So those are some of the deals that are going on as folks are trying to pick up their players that they want and all of that. As a matter of fact, the Rays, which is the Durham Bulls home team, have parent franchise, have added 2-time Cy Young winner Corey Glover on a 1-year deal. So they've reportedly agreed to a 1-year, $8 million guaranteed deal with right-hander Corey Glover, with the potential for $13 million if he pitches a full season. So who knows? Maybe he'll get some playing time here. As you know, sometimes the majors go down to the minors and vice versa. And the Rays also went all in with shortstop Wander Franco, and they've agreed to a 12-year contract with that particular individual that guarantees him around $185 million. The deal is worth a maximum of $223 million and all of that. So definitely, I'm sure that there'll be some other teams eventually. Oh, the Brewers. I was trying to find out if the Brewers had added anybody, and I just found out that about a week ago they added catcher Pedro Severino, and that's on a 1-year, $1.9 million contract. So like I said, a lot of these teams in the baseball world are making those off-season moves, trying to beef up their teams, trying to make their teams better in whatever way they can and all of that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that regards and everything along those lines. How is your basketball team doing? Is your basketball team doing well or not doing well? Is it doing as well as you expected it? Or where are they right now and all of that? Within an hour of a trade that sent him to the Phoenix Suns in November of last year, Chris Paul had flown to Phoenix to meet up with Devin Booker for workouts in a private gym at a borrowed palatial estate. It was the offseason, but both men were in a rush, eager to put roots down on something new. At age 35, Paul knew he was running out of chances, with the scars of past star-parent failures marring his resume. Booker was beyond impatient, having declared he was done missing the playoffs in 2019, only to see another losing season the following year, playing for his 5th head coach. Just 12 months had passed since that meeting, but Paul and Booker seemed to have packed years of chemistry building into it. The compression is most evident in clutch situations, that delicate time where experience is so valuable and where this star couple already has turned into major superstars and all of that. Dominance in clutch situations is driving the Suns' tremendous start this season, which is crested with a 16-game win streak as they go into a major test on today against the 18-2 Golden State Warriors. Over the last year, we've learned a lot about each other, Booker said. Obviously, experience is the best teacher. So that ought to be an interesting match and everything when the Warriors, who are doing quite well this year, go up against the Phoenix Suns, who are also doing quite well as well. As a matter of fact, ESPN betting analysts Tyler Fulgham, Andre Snellings, and Eric Moody offered a betting guide for Tuesday night's NBA's highly anticipated matchup and all of that. So the Warriors are 18-2 and winners of 7 straight, while the Suns are 17-3 and winners of an astounding 16 in a row. This will be the first time in NBA history that both teams enter a matchup with a win percentage of at least 850 and each on at least a 7-game winning streak. So this ought to be a serious, wonderful matchup and all of that. By the way, Celtics Enes Kanter Freedom says he'd welcome a sit down with LeBron James on human rights abuses in China. I'm here to educate him. Boston Celtics center Enes Kanter Freedom said he would welcome the opportunity to speak to Los Angeles Lakers star LeBron James, who he has criticized along with Nike of hypocrisy because of not speaking out about human rights violations in China, and educate him on the subject. Sure, I'd love to sit down and talk to him, Freedom said Tuesday after the Celtics practice. I'm sure it's going to be a very uncomfortable conversation for him. I don't know if he's going to want that. I'll make that really comfortable for him. I don't know if he's educated enough, but I'm here to educate him and I'm here to help him because it's not about money. It's about morals, principles, and values. It's about what you stand for. There are way bigger things than money. If LeBron stopped making money now, his grandkids and grandkids and grandkids can have the best life ever. I feel like it's definitely time for athletes to stand up for the things they believe in, not just in America, but all over the world. Freedom, who became a U.S. citizen on Monday and changed his last name from Kanter to Freedom to celebrate the occasion, has repeatedly spoken out against both James and Nike for their failures, in his eyes, to call out human rights abuses against the Uyghur population in China's Xinjiang province. During his interview with reporters Tuesday, he wore a shirt that read, "Freedom for Uyghur." After the Celtics beat the Lakers at TD Garden earlier this month, James was asked about Freedom's comments about him. James said, "Freedom is not someone I will give my energy to," adding that Freedom had an opportunity to approach him after the game, but instead walked by him in the hallway. When asked about that interaction Tuesday, Freedom, who Celtics played the Lakers on December 7th in Los Angeles, presented his side of the story. "I was actually on the court, and after I left the court, he was behind me. Then I stopped to take a picture with a kid, and he was the one who walked right past me," Freedom said. Freedom on Tuesday reiterated his feeling that Nike is the biggest hypocrite company out there, noting they stand for Black Lives Matter in America. Amazing. They stand for the Latino community. No Asian hate. They stand with the LGBTQ community. But when it comes to some of the countries out there, like China, they remain silent. Obviously, they are using these players to become the face, like Cristiano Ronaldo for soccer, LeBron for basketball, and some older athletes, but they've become puppets. I feel like we need to be careful of what we are wearing because every time you put those items on your feet or back, there's so much blood or sweat or oppression on those items. Freedom also renewed his criticism of Michael Jordan for remaining silent on these issues, and other players have encouraged him to bring Jordan into the conversation as well. The thing is, whenever I talk about LeBron, whenever I talk about Michael Jordan, the black athletes in the league are the ones reaching out to me and saying, "Listen, talk about this person," Freedom said. Not many people know this, but they are the ones giving me talking points. When Black Lives Matter protests happened, I was the third one in the whole league that went out there and protested. I was actually wearing my jersey. I wanted them to know that I am with them. But when these issues are happening, some of the other players out there in the league are scared to say anything against LeBron or Jordan, but they are reaching out to me and giving me talking points and saying, "Listen, you talk about LeBron, it's amazing, but he's at least standing up for things in America. Why don't you say anything about Michael Jordan? The only thing he is doing is just giving money, but he is remaining silent. He is scared to speak up." This season, Freedom has been wearing shoes depicting various people and places he has spoken out against, including Chinese Communist Party General Secretary Xi Jinping, Nike, and James. He has also used his shoes to promote causes like freedom for Tibet and Taiwan. He said the idea for the shoe campaign was his own and that it came from his childhood growing up in Turkey. When he would watch NBA games on television, the first thing he noticed was which shoes the star players were wearing, and he decided that would be a way to raise awareness and break through to young people watching at home. The important thing is to inspire the young generation, Freedom said, and I think that was the best way to do it. And I looked at the rule books, and there was nothing against it. To that end, Freedom has said he's had conversations with Adam Silver about his shoes and told the NBA commissioner he would comply with any league rules. I was like, if there's any rule that I'm breaking or I'm violating, let me know. I'll be the first one to follow, Freedom said. He said, "No, you're not violating any rules." And I was like, "Adam, you guys are the ones that are telling us and encouraging players to stand up for what's right, not just in the problems in America, but all over the world. So you guys are the ones that encouraged me to talk about all these violations that are happening all over the world, right? And he was like, listen, you have the freedom to say whatever you want. And I was like, I appreciate that. Freedom was speaking to the media for the first time in several weeks. Through the first 17 games of the season, he played less than 10 minutes, combined in 2 brief appearances as he sat third in Boston's center rotation behind Robert Williams and Al Horford. So definitely good to see players that are making stances about a number of issues and all of that. By the way, the Milwaukee Bucks are expecting DeMarcus Cousins to be available Wednesday night against the visiting Charlotte Hornets. The Bucks announced Tuesday that they had officially signed the veteran and 4-time All-Star who earned second-team All-NBA honors in 2015 and 2016. Cousins will attempt to boost a Bucks front court that is missing injured center Brook Lopez. DeMarcus is incredibly talented, and his size, toughness, and experience will help us, according to the Bucks general manager, John Hortz. He will provide added depth to our front court rotation, and we look forward to working him into our season, into our system. The Bucks, 13-8, have won 7 consecutive games, but have been dealing with front court issues due to the absence of Lopez, who hasn't played since a season-opening victory over the Brooklyn Nets because of a back injury. Cousins should help in that regard, even if the 31-year-old forward no longer is in all-star form. He played a combined 41 games with the Houston Rockets and LA Clippers last season, while averaging 8.9 points, 6.4 rebounds, 1.9 assists, and 17.4 minutes. He holds a career average of 20.4 points, 10.6 rebounds, 3.1 assists, 1.4 steals, and 1.2 block shots in 606 regular season games with the Sacramento Kings, New Orleans Pelicans, Golden State Warriors, the Rockets, and the Clippers, and he won the gold medal with the 2016 U.S. Olympics teams. So, and if you wanted about a player that was doing really well in a recent game, that would be Jonas Valanciunas. He wasn't exactly a marksman when he entered the NBA in 2012. In fact, his first 5 seasons in the league, he went 1 of 4 from the 3-point range. But those days are long gone. Matter of fact, he hit his first 7 points on Monday night, all in the first half, as he helped lead the New Orleans Pelicans to a 123-104 win over the Los Angeles Clippers. The 6'11", 265-pound bruiser has slowly started to add the 3-point shot to his game since 2017, but he's never had a night like he did on Tuesday when he scored a career-high 39 points to go along with 15 rebounds. Wow, that's a lot of points that he was putting up in that particular game and all of that. So that's some of the news in the world of sports, and definitely hope folks are enjoying it. They've got some thoughts around the sports world as well. So getting ready to have a couple of more just quick items in the sports report. That's right. We're trying to give you a little bit of a sports report and cover different things in the sports world as well. So definitely one of the things that we saw was that some major things were going on in the world of soccer. So of course we like to see what's happening in that world as well. So before we get ready to wind down this particular edition of the wide world of fantasy football and sports in general, it does look like that for the 6th consecutive year, ESPN has presented its annual ranking of the best men's players and coaches in world soccer. So, the rankings are broken down according to different positions and things of that like. But whereas last year was dominated by Liverpool and Bayern Munich, the clubs combined for 8 of the 10 number 1 spots. The leaders in this year's edition are spread across 6 teams, with none having more than 2 men in the top in respective categories. One common theme, though, was that all but 2 of the 10 leaders won silverware in the past 12 months, be it at a club or international level, which is kind of what you wanted voters to think about. Put reputation to one side and focus instead on what have you done for me lately. So among those that are represented include Chelsea and Manchester City. Bayern, Liverpool are also in there as well. And of course, there's a lot of names that people will be familiar with to some degree or another. And then there's some others that folks will be trying to figure out who these folks are. But when it comes to goalkeepers, the number 10 person in that ranking was Keylor Navas. Keylor Navas was the number 10 goalkeeper, and number 9 was Emiliano Martinez out of Argentina. And then you keep going down, and you've got other folks that are getting a lot of love as well. So if you go to the ESPN, you can see different people that are getting a lot of love. Matter of fact, the number one ranked goaltender is none other than Jan Oblak, and he plays for Atletico Madrid and Slovenia, only age of 28. And in contrast to the trend of sweeper keeper, the Slovenia international is all about the bread and butter of goalkeeping, stopping goals. Aside from his distribution under pressure, Oblak is the complete number one, equipped with strong hands and exceptional agility. His position himself extremely well, including when rushing out, and his concentration and reflexes are so sharp that he can even reshape his body to keep out a late deflection. So a world-class goalkeeper, and it looks like they were saying that he definitely deserves that number one spot. If you're wondering about the right back, well, it starts off at number 10 with Benjamin Pavard, and then we go down to some other positions as well. Denzel Dumfries of Netherlands is in that list. Jesus Navas is in that list as well. And then we're going to find out who our number one person is. Well, number two is Trent Alexander-Arnold of Liverpool, England. And the number one person is Achraf Hakimi, and they play for Paris Saint-Germain, where they were moved from Inter Milan in July and Morocco. So Hakimi proved the perfect wingback on the right side of Antonio Conte's Scudetto winning Inter Milan team, much like with Borussia Dortmund previously. The Moroccan international, who can also play on the left, was an uncontainable presence, causing a constant attacking threat with his strong running and wingerisk dribbling skills. He scored a remarkable 7 goals for Inter and has started this League One career in impressive fashion. So it does look like that is somebody that people will be paying attention to as well. And in the center back, well, it starts off with number 10, Virgil van Dijk, and then it goes on into some other folks like Thiago Silva, who plays for Brazil, as well as David Alba, who plays for the Real Madrid. And then there are others that are featured as well. And our number 2 person is Marcanas, and they play for Paris Saint-Germain and Brazil. And then the number 1 person is Ruben Dias, who plays for Manchester City and Portugal, and is only 24. The way Dias went from a promising center back in the Portuguese league to becoming the backbone of the Premier League title winning team is almost unprecedented. His measured, calm style resembles a seasoned defender in his peak years, usually between 28 and 32. He reads the game so well to make interceptions and is a vocal commander of his teammates. He is also quick over long distance, good on the ball. His medium and long passes are of an exceptional, especially high quality, and dominates in the air. Then we're going to go and find out who they're talking about in the left back positions. We've got people like Marcos Alonso, Rafael Guerrero, and there are some other well-known names as well. And then once we get down to the number 2 person, that is Alphonso Davies, who plays for Bayern Munich and Canada, and is a very young age of 21. And the number 1 person in that category is Andy Robertson, who plays for Liverpool and Scotland. Not only does the Scotland international score highly in terms of quality, but he's among the very best when it comes to quantity. Few left backs can match Robertson's consistency. He's almost always available for selection, and when he plays, he's extremely active, always getting involved. So it looks like he is a great player and all of that. And now we're going to see about the midfield. And there are a number of names on this midfield list as well. I saw that Pedri was on that list, as was Casemiro, and there are a couple of others that I'm seeing as well. But the number 1 person in that category is N'Golo Kanté, who plays for Chelsea and is definitely has that French kind of background as well. So a rare type of defensive midfielder who combines mobility and high work rate with simple, efficient passing and first-class ball-carrying abilities. Kanté seems to do the work of 2 players in midfield as he whizzes around the pitch, closing down opponents, winning the ball, and passing it along swiftly. He's also a perfect team player, an all-around nice guy, and the ideal foil for more attacking teammates to thrive. And, there are folks in the attacking midfield as well. So, soccer is made up of all kinds of different positions and folks that are doing amazing work in that sport. And the number 1 person in that attacking realm is Kevin De Bruyne, who plays for Manchester City and is of Belgian descent. Few players keep improving well into their 20s, but De Bruyne has added or sharpened features to his game consistently over the past decade and now 30, the Manchester star is a technically brilliant playmaker who is so practical and direct in the execution of his ideas that it's almost impossible for opponents to keep up, is what folks are saying in that regards. And then, there are definitely people that will be looking for the wingers as well. Wingers are a very important position, and definitely that is something that folks will be looking for. And the number one person in there is Sadio Mane, a remarkable, fast, and agile forward who's equally as good at flying past defenders as he is setting up and taking part in clever combinations in and around the penalty area. So definitely, those are just some of the folks that you might be interested in. By the way, Neymar was ranked among the forwards. I think he was like number 5 or something like that, but he was not the number 1 forward, but he was in that ranking. And Cristiano Ronaldo was only number 2 among the forwards. So definitely, folks might have expected him to be higher. And we knew that the number 1 one would be Lionel Messi, though he's yet to hit top form for a new club, PSG. The now 7-time Ballon d'Or winner was breathtakingly brilliant for Barcelona during the first part of the year and has been so good as he's ever been for Argentina. While his trademark burst past multiple opponents may have dwindled with the age, he is still a top playmaker and still an amazing player and all of that. So definitely folks will be paying attention to all of these amazing players as soccer continues to stay in the forefront of the sports world and all of that. So definitely that is some of the things that people will be paying attention to in that realm. And I'm glad to see that people are definitely engaged in the sports coverage that we give them on a regular basis and things along that line. So that was a little bit of news around soccer. I know that when I did a poll, people were saying that they would like more coverage of soccer. So I did give them a little taste of what was happening in the soccer world as well. I did say that I would also try to see what was happening in the world of NASCAR. We know NASCAR is a very popular sport here in the North Carolina area and all of that. So definitely one of the stories that we're seeing is that Kyle Larson's journey has definitely given him some thoughts that he was going to have some responsibility as well. And I think we covered that story sometime earlier in this month and everything along those lines. So NASCAR will resume practice in terms of qualifying very shortly. So NASCAR will return practice and qualifying to its weekend schedule for all 3 national series in 2022 after the on-track activity has been mostly scrapped the past 2 seasons amid the coronavirus pandemic. NASCAR traditionally hosted 3-day weekends for its races, but dropped all qualifying and practice when competition resumed in May 2020 after a 10-week shutdown due to the pandemic. Some practice sessions returned this year, and championship weekend this month at Phoenix was the closest yet to a pre-pandemic schedule. We missed seeing cars and trucks on track all weekend long, and so did our fans, said Scott Miller, NASCAR's Senior Vice President for Competition. We work closely with our broadcast partners, teams, and racetracks to create an exciting, unique qualifying format while keeping several of the efficiencies that helped our entire industry successfully navigate the pandemic. NASCAR will use a knockout-style format for qualifying in 2022. It will vary depending on both track type and series. The Cup field will be split into 2 groups for most races and participate in a 2-hour practice and qualifying event. NASCAR will Class 6 Cup races, 5 Xfinity Series races, and 8 Truck Series races as expanded weekends. An expanded weekend includes 1 standalone 50-minute practice. It will be the only weekends that will feature a practice separate from qualifying. The Daytona 500 field will still be the same as always, with the front determined by the February 16th time trials. The rest of the starting lineup will be set by the 2 qualifying races. The other 3 super speedways events, 2 at Talladega and the August race at Daytona, will not have practice, but the cars will qualify before the race. So that is some of the world of news from the world of racing. And of course, we may get some other news as well. But we're going to wrap it up and everything. That was a little bit of our sports report, our hourly sports report. Hope that y'all enjoyed it. If there are things that you are interested in hearing about in the sports world, let us know. And we would love to hear your thoughts about a number of sports issues. So we're going to go out with this poem about athletics and our 30-second clock.
Who Am I? By Victor Jones. Who am I? That's a good question. First off, I'm not a Republican or Democrat, as if to boast or celebrate either party doing anything great to establish equality for my people since the birth of this Western civilization. So who am I? Not an Elk or a Mason, and desire not to be part of any so-called organization. But the question still remains, who am I? To define my identity by my last name, which comes from a former slave master, I am a son of a slave. Being free from slavery, I become a son or a victim of Jim Crow. Abolished from Jim Crow, I became a son of segregation, or should I say a last-class citizen. From the passing of the Civil Rights Act, which overruled segregation, I became a son of incrimination. So who am I? With such a defining question, it becomes very complex to understand who I really am, with all of my history being buried on the shores of West Africa, where it all began. Kush, Ethiopia, Egypt, Ghana. So where do I come from? I didn't get a chance to choose what race, creed, or color I would possess, so here I am today, born a black man in a so-called democracy that continually proves its hypocrisy towards my black nature. A government where the original philosophy, doctrine, and scientific explanation is a downplay of equality for my existence, producing hopelessness and destruction to my identity of who and what I am. The question still remains, who am I?